Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Fresha and I'm interested in learning how to live a happier, healthier, more creative life. And since you clicked on the video, I'm hoping that you and I can learn how to build the lives that we want together. Today, we are going to be talking about burnout again. I've talked about preventing burnout on the channel before, so if that is a topic you're interested in, I'll link that video somewhere, maybe in the description. But we're back on the topic again because burnout is a really complicated, complex topic and, unfortunately, an increasingly relevant topic for people like us today. So if you want to learn more about how to recognize burnout, let's head into the video. So first off, the basic question. What is burnout? Burnout is the term coined by psychologists to describe the severe condition of stress that leads to physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. It's definitely much worse and more intense than your run-of-the-mill fatigue that can oftentimes be provoked by not getting enough sleep, maybe working a little bit too much, and worse and more intense than the typical stress that all of us have in our day-to-day lives. Instead, people who are feeling burnt out often feel like they are at 10% or like their tank is empty and they just have nothing left to give. They often feel a sense of dread, pessimism, hopelessness, and they can often struggle to complete their day-to-day responsibilities or handle just daily run-of-the-mill stressors because they really do feel like they've hit the bottom of their gas tanks. And anyone can experience burnout, but there is some research indicating that people with personality characteristics like perfectionism, needing to be in control, being high achievers, and being type A are typically at a much higher risk for experiencing burnout. I know this from experience. Growing up, I was a proud type A Virgo. I was always on it. I was not just on it, I was ahead of it, okay? Before you even thought it, I'd done it. My parents never had to ask me to do anything. I always had my shit together. I really took a lot of pride and really identified with that Virgo trait of being a perfectionist. Thankfully, as I've gotten a little bit older and I've gone through repeated cycles of burnout, I have really divested from that identity. And now I not only not see it as a positive thing, I actually see that as a toxic trait and a red flag. If I feel the need to control a lot of things, if I start to focus on things like perfection, that to me is an initial warning sign that something is off in here, and I've got to recalibrate because perfectionism is a defense mechanism that I have, and it's my way of trying to control things when I internally feel out of control. So what are the signs of burnout? So as I said in my previous video, symptoms of burnout can include things from self-isolation, not wanting to see people who care about you or who you care about, fantasies of escaping your life, being highly irritable, and experiencing frequent illness. Burnout can also lead to and definitely worsen the symptoms of depression and anxiety if those are underlying problems for you. I've spoken a lot already on this channel about how last year, from summer to say late fall, I went through one of the worst depressive episodes of my life, and this was really catalyzed by a feeling of burnout from work. Depression is something that I've dealt with for most of my life. I have I'm not saying this is a positive thing, but I have a general understanding of how that works in my body and how there's a certain intimacy with that feeling. I don't find it as scary or as overwhelming as I did when I was a teenager, but this one was particularly bad because it was compounded by the effects of burnout. So I definitely am speaking from experience here. It's not fun. That's bad news bears for sure. So obviously this sounds really bad. We would like to prevent it as much as possible. And if you go into my previous video, I have some tips there on preventing burnout. Honestly, some advice that I probably should have taken for myself last year, but hey, we're living and we're learning forever and ever.
Until the day we die.
And prime example here, sometimes you don't take the proper steps you need to take to prevent burnout, or sometimes you do it, but maybe it's not enough. Maybe you've just kind of misdiagnosed how far deep you've gone into work, into daily stressors, and you've kind of missed the mark, and you start to feel a general sense of dread, oh no, something is not right. And this is where we really want to take the time to assess ourselves and ask the honest question, am I burnt out, or am I quickly approaching burnout? And in order to do this effectively, let's turn to the research. So thanks to the research done by psychologists like Christina Maslach, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and several other researchers in the field of psychology, it's now well established that burnout is a syndrome with 3 key symptoms that arise in response to chronic stress. And those 3 parts of burnout are exhaustion, cynicism, and ineffectiveness. Let's dive into each symptom with a little bit more detail. So first up, exhaustion. So exhaustion is the central symptom of burnout, and it is the first one we typically notice. It's pretty hard to escape. It's not just mental, it's not just emotional. We also feel it in our body. It's all encompassing. Exhaustion describes the severe physical, cognitive, and emotional fatigue that undermines people's ability to work effectively and to feel positive about what they're doing. When you're approaching burnout, your fuel tank is low. It's either not being replenished at all, or it's not being adequately replenished at a pace that can keep up with your burn rate. And this exhaustion can come from anything, but it's usually a mix of things. Anything from, 24/7 always on work culture to an always on internet culture, a sense of intense time pressure, or just having too much to do, too many projects, tasks, deadlines, than is reasonable for the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week we all have. And these larger cultural pressures are exacerbated if you feel like you don't have control over your work, or you don't have autonomy in it, if you dislike what you do, or if you feel like your work is misaligned to your skill sets or your values. When you're exhausted, you feel like you are unable to concentrate on both the necessary details and the big picture. It's almost like you're stuck in this vantage point where you're disengaged, you're disheartened, the world has kind of lost its color, and you don't feel like you can see a way up or out. You just kind of feel like a hamster on a wheel. And even small everyday tasks or tasks that you used to enjoy now feel onerous, and they feel like a burden, and it can feel difficult to pull yourself throughout the day. So if you are finding yourself dreading work and school every day for an extended period of time, if you're withdrawing from activities that used to bring you joy, or if you just feel like your gas tank is on 0 at all times, I would recommend doing a little further research or speaking to your doctor to see if exhaustion is an appropriate diagnosis for your current mental state. Because if it is, you definitely could be barreling straight towards, I'm gonna say it, burnout. Okay, symptom number 2. The next symptom is called cynicism, and it's also called depersonalization, and this represents a diminished level of engagement with your daily life and work. So this means that when you're showing up, if you're showing up at all, your interest is hovering just above 0, if not at 0, if not in the negatives, let's be honest. Like, you are not having it. Not only are you not having it, you can't even imagine what it felt like to have it. You've lost your grasp, baby. You've lost the plot. So cynicism is essentially a way of distancing ourselves from our work or from our stress. Instead of feeling invested in your work, in the projects you're working on, in the larger mission of what you're trying to do, in your relationships with your colleagues or with your friends, and even the projects that you have in your day-to-day personal life, instead of feeling investment, engagement, joy in these things that make up our life and work, you feel detached, negative, maybe even resentful. And if you're constantly participating in unconstructive activities such as like workplace gossip, Schadenfreude, you gotta watch that Schadenfreude, my friend. Maybe you're engaging in some self-sabotage, maybe you're just like not even showing up for yourself, and you're struggling to find the same level of engagement in work or in your life that you used to have. These could be signs that you are in the cynicism phase of burnout. And we don't want that. That's not how we want to live our lives. We want to show up to our lives vibrant, full of joy, engaged. We want to feel interested in the work that we're doing. We want to feel proud of the work that we're doing. We want to have good relationships with the people around us. And listen, that's not going to be all the time, right? Like sometimes, it's okay to have a bad day. And sometimes we're just hovering around neutrality for a couple weeks on end. But on the whole, net, you want to be living a life that feels good to you. And if cynicism has taken over, speaking from experience, it's so easy to acclimate to that. It's so easy to heckle from the cheap seats because we're unwilling to admit that we're too exhausted to get up from them. And that's okay, but you need to be honest with yourself because you do deserve a life in which you are in the arena and you feel empowered in your life, and you aren't being forced to constantly take a negative frame because you're too exhausted, or you feel like you have no support, you feel like there's no exit route or backup plan, and you feel like you have no one to talk to. And then last, but certainly not least, the final symptom of this three-part party we call burnout is ineffectiveness. So ineffectiveness refers to the feelings of incompetence, ineptitude, and a general lack of achievement and productivity in one's work and life. So when you have this symptom of burnout, it can feel like your skills are becoming dulled like a knife. This can lead to anxiety that we're not good enough, or that we're undeserving, or we're incompetent, and that we won't be able to succeed in certain situations or to accomplish certain goals. We've become so burnt out that we have lost healthy perspective on our skill sets and how they match up to the world and people around us. A lot of times when I talk to my friends or my colleagues who really suffer from imposter syndrome, I usually ask them, and I'm not like a therapist, this is just us like shooting the shit person to person, you know. I ask them if they're feeling tired, if they're feeling overworked, because I do, again, speaking from experience, think that things like exhaustion and cynicism really are precursors to imposter syndrome. And it makes sense that ineffectiveness often develops in parallel to exhaustion and cynicism because people can't perform at their peak, at their best level, when they've run out of fuel and when they've lost their sense of connection and purpose at work or in life. So if you find yourself struggling to complete tasks that were once considered baseline to you, or if you're struggling to complete them at a quality level that you're used to performing at, or if you're just feeling overwhelming feelings of anxiety around your skill set or your quality of work, I think it's definitely a good idea to speak to loved ones around you, go speak to a therapist, a doctor, a mental health professional, just to check whether or not you've reached that final symptom of burnout, which is ineffectiveness. So, in short, if work and life have been serving you second helpings, third helpings, extra helpings of stress, responsibility, pressure, it's important to pay attention to how you feel. And if you check in and you realize you don't feel that great, it's important to take care of yourself. Go talk to someone, start installing those self-care habits by going on walks, journaling, taking the time to sleep. Don't ignore it. Again, speaking from experience, as someone who has gone through multiple cycles of burnout, it's actually the worst feeling. You feel like a shell of yourself and you forget what it feels like to feel good and to feel human. And it can take you God knows how long to recalibrate and come back to baseline. And I don't want that for you. I don't want that for any of you. I don't want that for myself. No more. 2024. 2024 is gonna be the year of no burnout, baby. For all of us, okay? All right, that's all we have for today. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.